Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street XDC video here, the XinFin network, the almighty XDC. Guys, before we go into this one, don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel. Obviously after this one, you must watch this one first, then check out the other videos. And don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, so you get all the latest updates on any of the videos that we present. And also keep an eye on the community section, because I will be asking you guys for the last call of the AMA that we've got with the Digital Pound Foundation imminently in the next 2 weeks, but also we've got Alliance Block AMA coming up as well, and there's loads of others in the pipeline for the next couple of months. Getting myself involved in all the CEOs and all these exciting organizations through the networking, the events that I go to, etc. So keep an eye out for that as well. Let's go straight into this topic, guys, of today. So quite recently, November 17th, 2022, so about 2-3 months ago, I just wanted to pull this up because we've been talking a couple of times the last couple of weeks about, you know, tokenized assets and things like this. But of course, there's two other big, massive things that we need to really start considering more about as time goes by. One being regulation, and of course, just the generalization of the global trade market as well. Now, we've identified multiple times in the past, and I'm going to go into massive detail about the trade market. I'll try and leave some of the examples at the end of this one. But, you know, this market is absolutely huge, guys, the trade market. Carstenman here, so one of obviously the advisors on the XDC board at the moment, or the XinFin board, Andre Carstenman was very much mentioning in this particular article about the magnitude of the trade market in general. And, you know, in the next few years, this is going to top significant amounts of money and valuation towards this market. And we're talking about everything trade related that you could possibly think of, whether that's, you know, logistical aspects of supply chain in terms of like freight deliveries, truck drivers, all of these kind of things, or indeed like just the whole entire momentum of trade, right? There's so many things to coordinate with this and bring into the attention of this topic. And one of the big things, particularly with the interlacing of the TRADA token, TRADA token last year, particularly with the integration of XDC, is really interesting to see this development. And the reason I wanted to bring that kind of topic back to the fruition is because I do believe this year is going to be a massive thing for regulation, especially with what we saw towards the end of last year, and rightly so mentioned here as well, with the FTX mess. There's a big call for regulation for this aspect as well. We know there's things like the ISO2022 compliance, which we'll touch on in a second, because I just want to show a bit of a loop around between this and the likes of HSBC, for example, R3 Corda, and what XinFin are doing towards this as well. But this whole topic about the trade market is going to really accelerate over the next few years. So I'm very interested in the TRADA aspect, the trade market in general, and particularly how XDC will be implementing its hybrid, you know, private and public blockchains into the atmosphere of blockchain in this particular area. So for me, this is really interesting. There's a lot of money involved as time goes by, and there's still a lot of things to really work out, you know, frameworks across the world, particularly here in the UK. And of course, now we're not essentially part of the EU, but the EU's got its own framework. I believe they call it the MICA. Yeah, so this part here, so this is about the markets and crypto assets. MICA, call it MICA for now, guys. But yeah, very much the framework, if you like, of ensuring regulation and essentially protecting consumers or users of cryptocurrency, and particularly stable coins. And as we go into the momentum of CBDCs, this is very much more important. But just pulling this back for a second to the topic here, Carstenman identified very much a few of the really upcoming or major countries involved in trade finance, but in a digital era. So look at this. I mean, the Asian Development Bank estimates that there's a $1.7 trillion gap in trade finance. It's absolutely huge, and certainly something that could be filled with the use of blockchain, and certainly the speeding up of the process. And if you think about like cross-border payments, how fast these can be delivered with blockchain, the factor of verification processing speeding up as well, this really does bring a massive opportunity for what they call here the TFD initiative, the Trade Finance Distribution Initiative, to really take this to another level. and the mention here of how important XDC can be a part of this, and all the different solutions, the different ecosystems that it has already under its belt to bring this to life and to be one of those major solutions out there. Obviously incorporating itself very heavily with the likes of Quant, for example. We've mentioned R3 Corda, of course, as well, which we'll touch on in a second. But I really like this point here. Silicon Valley, of course, when this created itself, probably around about 20 years ago, really, ideally and realistically, this is like the next phase, guys. This is why I'm so excited about cryptocurrencies in general, blockchain development, technology integration, and certainly this utility of what could be achieved moving forwards. Some of it's good and some of it's bad, depending on who's controlling it. We've been through all of that, of course, a multitude of videos. But the point being is that if you're investing and you're doing your research correctly and you identify these kind of projects like XinFin, you'll really understand the solution that they've got, but also the markets that they're aiming for. And this is a huge, huge opportunity for the fourth industrial revolution, which is what the World Economic Forum have always called it for the last 5-6 years. And this is no different to be very much mentioning these things, particularly here in this article from Castleman with block data here, and just talking about that emergence. And leading on to here, because there is mention in this article about banking in general and trade marketing. Well, one of the biggest trade market related banks is indeed HSBC, who are very, very heavily involved in DLT adoption and development. They have been for a number of years. And particularly I wanted to pull out SIX, the SIX digital exchange. We covered this a few times in the past. It's absolutely phenomenal to see these kind of integrations. But look at this. The EIB issued $100 million bonds on the Ethereum public blockchain. And then UBS issued a Swiss digital bond with a dual listing on this exchange. But there's also mention here as well about the aspect of utilizing various different DLT frameworks across the EU and across the UK. So there's some really big things here, but my point being about the trade market is HSBC has its fingers in a lot of pies when it comes to blockchain and DLT development, and particularly, very importantly, the management and frameworks towards the digital currencies that we're going to see, the CBDCs, and utilizing the likes of Hyperledger Fabric. This is a very interesting topic individually, aside from XDC. Hyperledger Fabric isn't something that you can really invest in at all. Very enterprise level. The likes of IBM use it, and ironically used in here as well. Microsoft, Accenture. There's a whole list of companies using this already and have done for a number of years. But what excites me the most is, of course, the adoption and incorporation of R3 Corda enterprise blockchain, which we know full well from the history of XinFin are very much integrated with R3 Corda and XinFin collectively as well. Just to pinpoint this, for example, the XinFin private and hybrid network states are fully interoperable with ISO2022 compliance standards, making it easy to connect with core banking, SWIFT payment systems, as well as ERP systems. But also this point here, this will create the ability to relay a limited set of data and transactions from privacy channels to the public network. Applications already deployed on the R3 Corda marketplace will be able to connect to XinFin's public network. So there's loads going on with this, guys, and this is what I'm very excited about XinFin and XDC's development over this particular year coming and the years to come. It's all being put into play when we have those big overlying conversations about CBDCs, the new frameworks, the new regulations, the infrastructure behind us. Even here, look, bonds and real estate, absolutely phenomenal to talk about this. Infrastructure and trade finance instruments. It's all piecing it together, guys. If you do the dot connecting, if you do the research, you will really understand the really true projects and technologies that are going to be an absolute force for the years to come. And I like to think we cover most of them here. If there's any that we don't cover on this channel, please do let me know, because I think this is a really big topic for the years to come, especially this ISO2022, guys. I don't know if you've seen the updates in the last few days, but this is really in full swing now. And actually, I believe there's certainly a directive right now for all the banks, especially here in the UK, to be adopting this by March this year. And this takes us very nicely as the years go by into 2025, when the whole entire complete RTGS system is replaced. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go on to the generalization of the channel platform onto the homepage of Wells of Wall Street, and you'll see the recent RTGS video I did on that. We're talking about $720 billion transactions per day going through this particular system, all interlacing with banks. And take it a step further, you realize about the standardizations of ISO2022 compliance and standards, and the replacement eventually of things like the SWIFT, the CHAP systems, the BAC systems. It's all amazing, guys. And XinFin is going to be one of those top projects and technologies behind a lot of this infrastructure, and certainly the framework, and certainly the integration of a lot of its systems, both on the private and the public ledger systems that it has, solution based. So really interesting, guys. Do keep an eye out for that, and definitely keep an eye out for that update. I think it was on Twitter, I saw it the other day actually, but it's very much from the ISO team, very much suggesting, like, if you haven't done this yet, banks, get yourselves involved. This is how to do it. So this is really heating up, guys. And I always said to people, like, I think time is possibly running out for which direction that decentralized and centralization will go. But for sure, in these coming years, is a massive, huge opportunity, irrespective of the mini bull cycle that we had over the last month. There is still a massive opportunity to adopt and accumulate, and certainly to take advantage of some significant gains over these next few years as these developments come out. And mark my words, by 2025 to 2030, when the Agenda 30 program of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations is on its tethering end, and mass adoption kicks in, mass awareness kicks in, wow, we're in for a treat. And then we need to decide whether we take advantage of that in this short space of time that we have left. The years are passing by so quick. That's all I can say. So keep doing your research, keep understanding, keep building your knowledge, and trust me, we're all in this together. And I want everyone to hopefully succeed in this, because there's some really big opportunities, but we've just got to be savvy now. Time is of the essence, guys. So with all of that in mind, hopefully we've talked to a few good topics here about XDC XinFin and their integration with the new systems, what's to come. I'm excited. I hope you are too. But for now, let's look at the price point of XDC. Out of all the cryptocurrencies and tokens and blockchains, this one is one that is such a slow burner still at the moment. I still think it's giantly undervalued, irrespective of supply and everything like this. We just have to realize how early we are with XDC adoption and utility, and certainly, in my opinion, still arguably some of the awareness of this particular project, and just people finally starting to understand what their place is in all of this moving forward. So if we take this beginning step of January, if you look at all the other projects that we covered, certainly in the last few days, we're talking about like between like 200% and 400% gains in 1 month. This one has hardly moved. I love this because it means I can accumulate as much XDC as possible at these current price points without it going crazy. And for sure, yes, of course, in the future, I'd love to see this absolutely fly. I think it's going to be a while until we see that. First of all, from a market trend perspective of taking the market up organically, but I'm talking about as trade finance really gets a hold of these blockchain developments, and certainly XDC's implementation in all of this, as well as all the other things we just spoke about, which is why I always develop these topics and thoughts, because they do interlace as well with the chart movements, what we can expect in the short term and the long term. This is a long-term hold for me. I'm not interested in selling XDC over the next year or two. I'm interested in selling XDC in the years to come when we're talking about giant market abilities. So right now, massive opportunity. And if you look at the data here, we're just touching on this fib retracement level at 2.88 cents. So not quite hitting the barriers just yet of 3 cents, which is just up here. But we could see this development over the next week or so. We'll have to keep this this option open in our minds. But as I said, the movement, even back here from December, down at 1.8 cents, the movement hasn't been massive or significant from there to this point. In fact, just a mere 60% from the beginning of December. And if I just take this up to the January or the early stages of January, we're just looking at around 24%. So For me right now, I always try and buy XDC at various levels. I have been buying some manually in the last few days because we've had some nice stabilization along this line. But I am anticipating that potential opportunities will arise at the lower regions. Not significant movement, to be honest, but I've still got my buy orders back here as we did in the last XDC video, which I think was in December actually. And we did mention that this is a good point of reference to try and obtain some more XDC at these areas, and that did come in. So I got some of those, but I've still got a buy order back there. And I'll always have some at these lower regions as well, just in case we have a market drop or a significant one. We've got some macro events to think about, like the recession, interest rates, bills, etc. Are people going to get more fear put into this and then take more money out of this, this space that we're in and the exchanges, etc. So keep an eye on all of that. All we can do is really DCA on the way down as well as on the way up. And for me, that's a good position or opportunity of interest. In general, as I said, I'm doing some manual orders right now. I'm really not that particularly bothered between this space and this space of like 2.7 cents. 2.7 cents and 2.8 cents. It's kind of like a bit silly to think about it that way. Unless you're driving in obscene amounts of value, you're not going to see much difference of buying at either of those areas. So it's really down to you as a personal preference, whether you're waiting for these slightly lower areas down towards the 2 cent area or 2.5 cent. But yeah, it's really flexible on what you'll feel comfortable with. This is obviously not financial advice, just telling you what I'm doing, what's been working in the past, and certainly from my experience over the last few years. And I'll reiterate, guys, I'm not looking to sell XDC for a long time, and anything under 10 cents is an absolute bargain for me, in my opinion, for XDC. If you look back in the history, and certainly into 2021, we saw those dizzy heights of 20 cents. So we look at ourselves back down at these current regions, irrespective of December or now, there's a lot of growth to get to those previous all-time highs, let alone the further gains that we could get towards 50 cents and hopefully in the future $1, which was more than achievable in my opinion over the next few years. And that would be a significant gain, especially if you've got great accumulation of this. I'd like in my head to get towards that million mark. I'm nowhere near that just yet. I'm just biding my time. There's a lot of projects that we're invested in. I'm not going to just jump into things or chuck loads of money instantly in there. I'm just trying to get as much accumulation as possible as I can at various different points. But yeah, for those that are jumping into or looking at XDC for the first time, for sure, as I said, in the long term, these are great price points irrespective of now or waiting for the drop. But if you are very particular about certain areas, do pay attention as well to the RSIs. So currently 14 days showing 63 and 28 days showing 58 on these marker points lower here. So this is very much slightly over the middle ground with an option potentially for slightly higher growth, but there is more of a chance at this moment in time for it to be coming down and taking advantage of those areas. So it's very much a bit of, I call it like the limbo area. It's like there's no like right or wrong, to be honest, because you don't really know at this flexible 50-50 stage which way it's going to go, right? If it's up at the 70s and the 80s, you're thinking, well, it's already high. There's only a certain limitation of how much higher that could go in a short space of time. And there's more opportunity on the way down, right? Or waiting for those lower opportunities. So that aside, performance-wise, XDC on the week, 5.4%. It's showing still really red negativities on the year in general, the 3 month and the 6 month. Now, the 3 months and 6 months are gradually coming down. I do think there's a psychological impact here in the sense that you might start seeing some interactions in a more positive way with XDC and the accumulation of this when those start going green, because people, I don't know why, but it's always just one of those psychological things when people see green on charts and exchanges and gains and losses, etc. People have a very different mentality rather than sitting back and really understanding where we are with everything. So just keep those in mind, but just more importantly, just keep focused on the identifiable actions of like the RSIs, the fib retracement opportunity levels. There's reasoning why we have these buy orders where they are. It's not always just about existing model, but also like historic data. Why are these points interesting? And actually, if we look back on that point, 28th of January today, or tomorrow, sorry, floating around this 2.8 cents mark. This is something that we had some really interesting resistance and support on around March 2021, so pretty much a year ago. So we're at these price points that we saw 1 year ago. It's going to be very interesting to see if we break that and then start having a forward momentum to try and test these areas, for example, at 3.8 cents, and maybe at some of these higher levels around 4.5 cents. Don't see that happening in the short term, but certainly over in a few months' time, potentially, depending on where we are with the world craziness that's going on, right? So keep an eye out for all of that. We're going to do an XDC update video next week anyway. We'll see how we've reflected on these points and notations that we've made today. Let us know in the comments below if you've been accumulating XDC like I have, whether you've been buying, selling, whatever you're doing, and let us know about your excitement, maybe even your concerns about XinFin XDC moving forward. What do you think about all the implementations that it might have? I, for sure, as I said, I'm very excited. I know that it's an ISO2022 compliant standardization token. This is very important to ensure for any related token towards the finance market and the finance industry. This is very important to understand, and this market in general, as well as trade market, is going to be absolutely gigantic when it comes to tokenization, digitalization of bonds and finance in general. What more positivity could I give to end this video? Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.